Here.
Brian Tandy, absent. Jane Taylor,
Here.
Lori Gross.
Here.
I'm here
Oh, Gordon Perry, sorry. How did I miss you, Gordon?
because I've been absent a couple of times.
We just got used to you not being here.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
just
you're
like-
present. Good deal.
Great. There is no old business, so we will jump into the new business.
We need to approve the minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry, approve the minutes. The minutes from last month's meeting, has everyone had a chance to look at them? Any questions, comments? Not, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Now we'll go to old business, of which there is none, and then new business. Ben, if you want to lead us through 2 items.
Right. So we had 2 items on the agenda. One of them has been continued, Rose Investments. They didn't get all their information in time, so we have continued that to next month's meeting. I do have all their information, so I know now, so I do know that they will be at next month's meeting. So on the agenda for tonight is docket 19-17. This is for the Culver's Restaurant. This is a development plan application. They're at 2454 North Lebanon Street, which is the former Bob Evans Restaurant. I'll walk through exactly what they're doing with the site here in a second. They have brought their plans forward, and they went to the Board of Zoning Appeals a couple of weeks ago. They had a handful of variances they needed to request. Half of those variances were because they're essentially reusing the existing site. So if they pull up this, I guess they pull up the screen already. You can see here that on the left is the existing site with the existing building footprint, and on the right is some of the changes they're going to be making. So they did an evaluation of the site over the last few months, looking at whether they could remodel and reuse the existing structure, the Bob Evans structure, or whether they were going to need to scrape that building off the site and just rebuild a new Culver's Restaurant on that site that is exactly the floor plan they need. What they ended up deciding is, even though it was going to cost a little bit more, that it made more sense for them to just go ahead and scrape that existing structure off the site and build a new building. With that, they're also primarily going to be reusing the existing parking lot with a few modifications. The biggest one being that they have to add a drive-through lane and drive-through window where there isn't one now. So the existing edge of the parking lot will remain the same. You can see here the drive-through windows on the north, or the drive-through kiosk is on the north side, the drive-through window is on the west side. So you'll enter the site, go around the building, wait in line on the north side, and then come around and pick up your food on the west side of the building. Because of adding that drive-through lane, it got a little bit narrower through that site. So what they needed to do is, in some places where the drive-through lane is located, make it a one-way drive aisle, so you've got some angled parking as opposed to the perpendicular parking you see here. So they've changed those to angle, and they've also moved their dumpster location a little bit from where it was before and putting a new enclosure in. So there's been a few changes the way the parking lot will work from 2-way to 1-way to account for that drive-through lane. Typically, they would usually want a site a little bit bigger than this to make sure everything fit a little bit easier, but they're working kind of within the existing parameters of the site. So they did have to make some modifications to make some 1-way lanes so everything worked the way it was supposed to. So this is kind of the general, what you see here. Everything hatched out is what's being removed, and here in hash is what's new. Getting an idea of the site. They did, after, as I mentioned previously, request a handful of variances, some due to the existing site, such as the corridor buffer. This parking lot right now meets the parking lot setback, but it didn't account for the buffer because the site was developed originally before the corridor buffer requirements of the thoroughfare overlay existed. So they did request and receive a variance from that corridor buffer requirement. I will show you in a second the landscaping that they are proposing, which is fairly significant. But they did request a waiver of that corridor buffer because it would have basically made the site unusable for them if they had to basically remove an additional 20 feet from this eastern property line. Second one was lot coverage. Again, the same thing. The existing site was about 80% coverage, and we only permit now 75%, so they're slightly exceeded it. With the redesign of the site, they actually slightly improved their lot coverage, but they still weren't able to meet the 75%, so they did get a variance from the lot coverage requirement. Lot planting is the same thing. Building-based landscaping, around 75% of the perimeter is now required. With some of the lot limitations, they got as much building-based landscaping in as they could, but they weren't quite able to get to that 75%. So they did get approval for relief from that requirement. The final two were more specific to the Culver's development than they were just to the existing site. One dealing with lighting intensity. What they wanted to do is they wanted more intense lighting on the site than what's permitted, and part of their challenges were even with using LED lights like they're going to, there's only so much that they could do the directional LEDs to keep the foot candles at the property lines below 0.5. They had indicated to the Board of Zoning Appeals that their patrons at night like a higher intensity lighting in the parking lot for safety reasons. So they provided lighting that would allow that. Because the parking lot is so close to the property lines, it's hard to get that light intensity down to 0.5 before it gets to the property line. So there are some places where it's a little bit higher, I think between 1 and 2 on the property line. I think for the most part it's along Lebanon Street, where there's probably more light coming from the street than there will be from the parking lot anyway. They also had their lighting contractor out on the site doing some lighting measurements around the property and found that in some cases there were already 1 and 2 foot candles around the property anyway. So by them adding this lighting, it's really not going to change the existing conditions. So they did get the variance approved for the lighting intensity. And then final one was the sign type. And if you all are familiar with the site, you'll know that Bob Evans currently has a pylon sign out there that you can see represented in this image. I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see a little bit better. You can see here the Bob Evans sign. What they're essentially doing is reusing the structure and replacing it with a Culver's sign. They did indicate that this was a hot point with corporate Culver's corporate, that they have a larger pylon type sign out here. The franchise owner has done a number of Culver's in this area, and so he's got a good relationship with Culver's corporate. And talking with them about the Lebanon market, they felt like it was going to be very important to have a larger sign like this out on the site. So that was part of the requirements of the corporate approval for this franchise, was to make sure that there was the appropriate signage out there. So we did discuss that with the Board of Zoning Appeals, and they did approve a variance to allow for this pylon type sign out here.
Ben, do you recall how much larger that was
It is.
per our standard?
So we allow 32 square feet for a ground sign. If you consider this as a pole sign or a pylon sign, they're allowed up to 200 square feet. So that's why they got a variance to allow a pole sign. So they are under, obviously, 200 square feet. They've got about 50, let's see, they've got about 65 square feet out there in the sign right now, between the static Culver's oval sign and then where it says chocolate covered strawberry. That's their digital sign that changes daily with their flavor of the day, for those that are familiar with Culver's. So that's not a digital sign that will be constantly changing, just pretty much every 24 hours it change for their flavor of the day, and that's all that will be displayed there.
But that's already been, or the BZA already approved that, correct?
The BZA did approve that.
Okay.
So those are the variances, and then just kind of go over the site generally. Let's go back to the landscape plan. Well, here we'll start with the elevations. The building does meet all the required architectural standards. Let's go to the next one. Whoops, that's the signs. Let's go back to the better elevations a little bit earlier in the packet. Here we go. This gives you a little bit better idea of what this building is going to look like here. It does meet all of our architectural requirements. It does meet the 50% masonry requirement. This will give you an idea of what that building is going to look like. Very attractive building, meets all of our requirements. So they have done the 360-degree architecture as we require. You can see here, this is the north side of the building here where the order window is. This is the drive-through window, which would be on the west side of the building. This kind of gives you an idea what this would be the east side of the building you see here on this frontage, and the south side here. In terms of landscaping, they have, other than the corridor buffer and the lot plantings, they have met all of our landscaping requirements, which represents a significant additional amount of landscaping than what's, good grief, slow down. There we go. So I think there's maybe a couple, 3 trees on this lot right now and very little in the way of shrubs. You can see here that they've got a significant additional amount of landscaping that's provided around the entire perimeter that more than meets our perimeter parking lot landscaping requirement. And they have additionally provided that the building-based landscaping around as much of the building as they could get. So they have met all of our parking lot landscaping requirements other than that buffer, and this will represent a significant improvement on landscaping than what's out there right now, which is fairly minimal in nature. So pretty excited about the improvements that they were able to make to the site in addition to the building that they're going to provide. Outside of that, they're essentially using the existing parking lot. They will have to resurface or repave areas that are damaged. I know that was made, comments were made at TAC. The other thing you do not see here that was the comments made at TAC were that they hadn't provided for a sidewalk along Lebanon Street in their plans. But that comment has been made to them that they will have to do that, so they are aware. And they will have to update those plans accordingly before we'd approve any building permits. So those are the two major comments that came out of TAC. Most everything else that came out of TAC were minor because they're reusing the existing site. I'll see if I've missed anything. I did not mention the parking requirements, but they have met all of our parking requirements for this type of use, providing a total of 55 spaces. And I think that kind of hits the highlights of the development plan application. Well, the applicant is not here tonight, but I understand that they would anticipate completing their building construction plans fairly quickly once they get all these approvals in place, the last one being tonight, and starting construction as soon as possible. I believe because this is not a full site development, really just a building construction, it will be fairly quick and should be later this year that they would have something ready to open. And we'll get a better idea what that schedule looks like from them as soon as they complete their construction plans and get their state approvals. So I think that's all I have. I'd be happy to answer any questions or comments you might have.
Questions for Ben? No? Okay, so this is a public hearing, so I will open it up for any and all to step forward and express their comments or concerns. Don't everybody rush at once. Seeing as how no one is stepping forward, I'll close the public portion of the meeting. And again, ask the commission if there are any questions or comments for Ben.
And I can assure you, we did send out public notices for this, so it's not why the room's empty.
Great. Seeing as how there's no questions for Ben, we would entertain a motion.
I'll motion that we approve docket 19-17 for the development plan as presented, provided that the applicant does adequately address all the City of Lebanon TAC comments prior to the application for any building permits or site improvements.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Kelly?
Matt Reynolds,
Yes.
Ashley Paddock,
Yes.
Kevin Krulik,
Yes.
Keith Campbell,
Yes.
Gordon Perry,
Yes,
Jane Taylor,
Yes.
Lori Gross.
Yes.
it passes. All right. There is other business of any type? Ben, nothing?
Nothing further.
Okay. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
A second? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we will see you July 15th for the next Lebanon Planning Commission meeting. Thank you very much. Everyone enjoy the 4th of July.
Two.